Today I'm going to talk about accounting fundamentals. In accounting fundamentals, the first I'm going to talk about what is accounting, and following that, classification of accounting. So first, let me explain what is an accounting. Accounting is a book is a definition. As per the book is definition, accounting is analyzing, identifying, regarding, summarizing, and reporting. Right? I can say this. All this is called as a business language. What is a mean by business language? For example, if any business transaction, if you take, there will be a debit and credit aspect, right? So to analyzing what is a debit, what is a credit, and reporting and recording the transaction in the business entity, and reporting and summarizing all these factors called accounting business language. That is called business language. For example, if I take an example with a business transaction, cash paid to Mr. X 50,000. So we need to analyze the transaction, analyze and identify the what is a debit, what is a credit, uh, and record the journal entry, books of an entity. Then it will go to ledger to trial balance to P&L account, and then balance it. That finally financial statement. All this called accounting. Identifying what is debit and recording as per the rules, as per the classification of the rule is called business language. And accounting is a what is accounting? It's a business language. To write the journal entry, we need to understand what is the debit and what is the credit. Without understanding the debit and credit, the entry will go wrong, the financial statement will go wrong, the business will go wrong. That's why to identify what is a debit and what is a credit, and regarding the journal entry in the books of entity in the chronological order is called accounting. Is understand accounting now? What is accounting? It's a business language. Why business language? To identify what is debit and credit, and record the journal entry in the books of entity in the chronological order is called accounting. Then book is language, analyzing what is the transaction, identifying what is debit, what is credit, and recording the journal entry in the books of an entity is called accounting. Okay, let's talk about classification of account. A very very interesting one, and which is very very important. We can call it as types of account, classification of account, golden rules of the accounts. I will prefer to call it as golden rules of accounts, right? That means wherever you go, whichever company you work, whenever you want to write a transaction, business transaction, journal entry in the books of an entity based on the transaction, you must know a classification of account. That is the golden rules of the account. If you go America, the rules will not change. If you go London, the golden rules of the account will not change. The debit and credit rules will not change. So hence, the golden rules of the accounts are very very important to learn. Under which, what are the transactions? What are the example will come? We'll talk about one by one. So, for example, first one, personal account. A personal account, and what is a personal account rule? A first rule: debit the receiver and credit the giver. What does that mean? For example, under this, what are the example in the personal account? When we are talking about personal account, which are the items will come? For example, which are the aspect will falls under the personal account? That we will talk about. For example, persons. It can be any person. XYZ Rama Sita. The person. Associated person. For example, X and Sons Limited Company, or B and Sons Co Limited Company. So all these are false and personal account, right? I'll talk about examples, right? Cash paid to Mr. X. cash paid to Mr. X. Now, as per the accounting, you need to analyze and identify which are the two aspects. Friends, every business transaction there will be a two aspect. What are two aspect? One is a receiving aspect, one is giving aspect, vice versa. So, as per the golden rules of accounting, for example, in this given transaction, cash is one aspect and Mr. X is another aspect, and cash cash is one aspect and Mr. X is one aspect, two aspect. As per personal account rule, Mr. X is a person, and hence, as per the personal account rule, debit the receiver, and hence the journal entry in the books of entity, Mr. X account should be debit, and cash is going out of the business, and hence cash is a credit. And the narration is very very important for the any journal entry to understand why narration is important to the entry, because for example cash paid to Mr. X on what, so that, and hence the narration is very important, being cash paid to Mr. X. Since I have not mentioned what is the purpose, but when a real example comes, cash paid to Mr. X on the so and so purpose. That purpose we need to mention in the narration of the entry. So hence, narration of the entry is very important. Please, note that that is very important. And cash is going out of business. I will gonna talk about when I am discussing a real account. Right now, understand real account. Once again, I will repeat. So, real account rule is debit the receiver, credit the giver. So, for example, when I say transactions, cash paid to Mr. X, there are two aspects, cash and Mr. X. Mr. X is receiving the benefit, and hence Mr. X account is a debit, and cash is going out of the business, and hence it's a credit. This aspect I will gonna talk about the real account. Let's talk about the real account now. Real account. What is the real account rule? Debit what comes in, credit what goes out. That means, and with examples, all the tangible asset and liabilities in the business. For example, what are the liabilities and what are the assets? Asset, it can be tangible assets and intangible assets, right? And again, it will be classifying fixed assets and current assets. What are my fixed assets? It can be machinery, building, land, equipment, etc. Right? These are all the fixed assets. And what are my current assets? It can be bills receivable, cash in bank, cash at hand, cash in bank, bills receivable, inventory, fixed goods, etc. So all these called current assets. So when we want to talk about transaction, an example, machinery purchased of rupees 50,000. So what is a journal entry? Again, accounting rule you need to apply here. Accounting. What is accounting? Accounting is a business language. Language. What is a business language? We need to identify what is a debit and credit. What is the two aspect to record the correctly, to record journal entry correctly in the books of entity. So let's identify, analyze and identify machinery purchased. So this is analysis. What is the two aspect? Machinery and cash. Paid means is cash going out of the business. So machinery is coming to the business, cash is going out of the business. Both aspect, that is the machinery aspect and another one is cash aspect, both are false and the real account. As per the real account rule, debit what comes in, machinery is coming to the business and hence it's a debit. Cash is also false and the real account rule, golden rule, and hence this is going out of the business and hence it is a credit. The narration, being machinery purchased with a cash, right? And where will it impact? Balance it, balance it under asset side, right? Machinery will increase, cash will machinery will increase, cash account will decrease. That means overall net impact is zero in the balance sheet type. But when you're talking about individual ledger, that is machinery and cash will reduce, machinery will increase. Don't worry at this point of time, who the person who is watching this video and non-commerce background students, don't worry at this point of time what is a ledger, a machinery ledger, and what is cash ledger. When you are talking about the ledgers, you will understand. But the person who knows who have commerce background and BCom background, right, they will understand. So overall net impact in the balance sheet is zero. But when you are talking about machinery and cash, it is a individual ledger will impact, so impact will that extent. Understand? Let's talk about the third one, nominal account. What is account rule? Debit all expenses and losses, credit all incomes and gains. For example, the transaction which falls under nominal account, a salary, wages, rent, stationery, depreciations, no miscellaneous expenses, all this, electricity, no factory rent, no wages, salary, all these expenses comes under nominal account rule, right? Which are very very important to record the journal entry and no, prepare the financial statement and to record the to record all these expenses in the financial statement, to publish the net result of the business at the accounting as per the accounting period, right? They're very important. So now talk about what is the exam with one example transactions. Salary paid 10,000. Now, salary again accounting rule. Apply the accounting rule. What is accounting rule? Analyze the transactions and identify what is the debit, what is my credit. Now, salary paid. That means we know salary is an expenses and cash is also the asset. Cash is asset. Salary is expenses. We know, we identify what is the what is the two aspect. Now, as per the aspect and rules apply, as per the golden rules apply, my salary comes, what is the nature of salary? An expenses. What is the nature of salary? An expense. Expenses comes under which account? Nominal account. Debit all expenses and losses. Regard the journal entry, books of entity, salary account debit. If you know the one transactions, one aspect correctly written, the other aspect is opposite one by default. Now, as per the accounting rule, right? Again, accounting rule. The other aspect is the cash. Cash is which account? Which account it will falls under? A real account, right? What it is talking about? Debit what comes into the business, credit what goes out of the business. That means salary paid to someone else. Salary paid. We don't know what to whom it has paid, but salary paid. When salary paid, cash is going out of the business, right? That means cash is a real account. Real account rule, what goes out? Credit. That, and hence cash is a credit in this transactions. What is the nature of cash? Asset. When all asset, I will talk about debit and credit rule. That also comes under accounting fundamental, right? So what is a debit credit rules with the, for example, asset, liabilities, expenses, revenue, capital, and drawings. I will gonna talk about no, in details, but this is overall classification of account, how to identify the business transactions, and within the transactions there will be two aspect, debit and credit. Identify those two transactions comes under which accounting which classification of accounts, and then it will be easy, because it is a very very important to record the journal entry with a correct debit and credit. That will comes when you know the two aspect falls under which type of accounts, which type of accounts. Take an example, machinery, just an example, machinery purchased rupees 50,000. So 50,000, right? So if you identify two aspects, machinery is one aspect, cash is another aspect. In this example, both are asset, and the asset falls under real account. As per the real account rule, debit what comes in, credit what goes out of the business, and hence you will know. So debit you will record machinery, credit you will record the cash. Likewise, understanding the two aspect in the transaction is very very important, right? If you understand and identify two aspect and apply the basic this golden rules, that entry will not go wrong. Then from journal entry to ledger, from ledger to trial balance, it is a summary, right? What is trial balance again? Don't worry, at this point of time all the non-commerce students who are watching this video, but when I'm talking about ledger and trial balance, I'll in detail I'll give the explanations. But at this point of time, I just want to give what is a trial balance mean. It's a summary of all the ledger accounts, right? Why business entity will prepare the trial balance to know the mathematical accuracy of the all the ledger balance. Journal entry to ledger balance to trial balance, and to that's where to know the arithmetical accuracy of the all the ledger balance, whether it is the correct the end balance or not. And then trial balance to a P&L account to a P&L account and balance it for the accounting, for the accounting period. So that is all the accounting cycle. Don't worry, at this point of time I will in detail I will talk about that later point of time.